Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much, and apologies for the late start. My name's Will. This is Dirta and Simon. We're from YouGov, a specific division of YouGov called YouGov Direct. We are changing the business model within a certain part of the business, and we're really excited to show you this afternoon one of those things that we have developed. What we're going to do is just give you a very quick overview of who YouGov is, what we are, where we operate. I'll then take you through what YouGov Direct is, why we built it. We've then got a little explanation of our integration with blockchain, because I know people will be particularly interested in that. We've then got some case studies that we'll talk through. We were going to have a client here today with us, but unfortunately they've had to cancel at the last minute, but we've still got all of their data that we can share with you. And then we're going to talk about the next steps and where we're going to go from here. And for those people attending the masterclass today, we have a special offer for you at the end. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pass over to Dirta, who'll just talk to you briefly about YouGov.
Okay, so for those of you who don't know YouGov yet, we are a research-based data and analytics company. We have our own panel, and worldwide we have around 7 million people who participate in our online surveys. So we are operating globally, and YouGov was founded in 2000 already. So we have quite some data that we have collected over the last couple of years, which our panelists are providing us with on a continuous basis. So we have a lot of data that we are collecting regularly. For example, I think a lot of you may probably know our brand index, our daily brand tracker, which is collecting brand health metrics for more than 12,000 brands worldwide about things like image values or awareness, ad awareness, brand awareness, consideration up to purchase intent. We have other surveys that collect data along media usage, for example, which TV channels you are watching, which radio channels you are using, whether you are paying attention to out-of-home advertising, all sorts of digital behavior, also traditional print magazines that you might be reading, and additionally a big set of attitudes, personality traits, but of course also demographics and consumer behavior data that is all going into our big data vault, the YouGov Cube. This is basically the center of everything that we do, where all the data that we are collecting ends up, and that we can then use to create different products and solutions for our clients. One is the syndicated products, like for example the brand index or YouGov profiles that our clients can use using this data that we are collecting ourselves. But there is additionally also the opportunity to connect this data with any bespoke, customized data that our clients are specifically looking for, and then taking advantage of this combination of the bespoke data and the syndicated data. And this data is really important for our clients, let it be advertising industry, advertising agencies, or media companies, or brands themselves who need data to make decisions based on data, to make decisions along the marketing planning process, because the advertising industry is currently changing a couple of challenges that they have to cope with. There's a lot of technical challenges that you are probably all aware of, things like a lack of transparency, there's a lot of threat out there due to ad fraud, and also the question whether all of the advertising that you are sending is actually seen by the people that you are aiming to send it to. Another big challenge is that a lot of consumers feel bombarded by advertising. There's too much advertising out there, I don't want to do that. Some people go into things like digital detox, where they deliberately say, I'm putting off my phone, I don't want to listen to all the noise anymore, I want to slow down. I want advertising that is more relevant and that is talking to me, my needs, whether that is a mass need or more a niche need. And the third challenge that we are talking to here today is that consumers also want to make sure that data companies like us, for example, are using the data responsibly, that they can trust these companies and that they know what they do with the data that they are giving to them and which purposes that they are using it for.
Thanks, Deta. So if that's the context within which we're operating, very quick summary about YouGov being a research and data business. And the challenges that we're hearing from our clients in terms of technical, consumer-related, and trust. So it's against this background that we built YouGov Direct. Now, from a consumer point of view, what we have created is a personal data vault. Consumers log in, and they permission with us the data that they want to be able to be used to target them. So whether that be their household situation, their financial situation, their brand preferences, their interests, their hobbies, they give that to us, they permission that, they give us their consent for targeting purposes, and we use that accordingly. And what we deliver in return is micropayments every time that data is used. So it is delivering value back to consumers, whereas they don't necessarily have it in the current ecosystem. From an organizational point of view, YouGov Direct is a fully opted-in, completely transparent, GDPR compliant, fraud-free audience solution. It's supported by very precise data that you can use for targeting purposes. And it crucially changes advertising from a one-way message into a two-way conversation. And I'll show you how that happens as we go through this. But let's talk about sort of the rationale for building it a little more. Roll back 2 years and everyone was talking about GDPR. What an administration burden it was, whether they had the legal rights to use the data that they were using for targeting purposes. And we, rather than view that as a challenge, thought, let's view this as an opportunity. We have a very, very deep and trusted relationship with, if you want to talk about legal language, data subjects. And they trust us with their data. So we thought, how can we push that envelope a little bit further? How can we turn that into our advantage, but also, crucially, give value back to consumers? And at the same time, we're listening to all those challenges around the digital advertising ecosystem and thought, how can we help tackle them? So let's take fraud and let's take transparency as two of the biggest challenges. And we've built the entire YouGov Direct platform on blockchain technology. We're not using this just as a buzzword or some form of interesting technology in order to gain attention. It's fundamental to the platform, and the entire platform is built on it. And the rationale for doing that is that every time a single piece of data is used, that is then logged in the blockchain. It tells us that that person provided consent, that they provided that data point for targeting purposes, that that advertiser used that data point and sent a message to them at this time. So it provides a complete, transparent audit trail of all the data transactions that happen within our system. It's also used for GDPR assurance. Because you've got that audit trail, you can always say that I used consented data and that it was precise data, and these were the people that we targeted. And it also, for consumers, provides the audit trail of this is the data that was used by me and permissioned by me and used by advertisers, and I gained reward from it. So it really does blow apart transparency, But it also blows apart bot traffic, because in order for a consumer to be rewarded, they need to link with us with their bank details. So it provides an instant barrier to fraudulent traffic, because they have to, one, download the app and then give us the data, and two, they then have to link their bank details in order that they get rewarded for use of their data. So we're taking apart transparency and fraud with this system. Let me show you an example of what this looks like going through an advertising journey and the app journey. So we've built this both in Android and iOS, and was released into the App Store in December and the Play Store at a similar time. And the first thing someone does when they log in and register with us is complete their profile. I'll talk a bit more about these profiles. So this is the consumer data vault. They log in, they complete their profile, and they permission it. That green box on the right-hand side of all those screens is that double opt-in consent. They have to give us the data point and then consent to targeting. And that profiling information is everything that advertisers can use to then target those consumers. At the moment, that is restricted to about 50 different variables, which you can then obviously overlay one on top of the other to create audiences that are interesting to advertisers. And at the moment, that covers basic demographic information, age, gender, location. It covers financial information, so looking at personal income, household income, disposable income, the types of insurance products that you hold, and the major bank that you have your accounts with. It then goes on to look at the household situation, so whether you're married, whether you have children, how old those children are, whether you are saving up to buy your own home and with a mortgage. So all of these types of variables start to build a very, very interesting and complex picture for advertisers. And what we're doing is building these out even further to look at life events. So whether you are going to have a baby, change job, move house, buy a car, make any major financial investment, that sort of thing. We've got media consumption data in there, and we've also got brand data in there as well. So let's go through what happens when an advertiser sends a message. And this was a test that we conducted immediately before Christmas in the UK. So you get an invitation pop up on your phone. You scroll through into your invitation page, and that is where all your invitations to review adverts or take part in other YouGov content. So as an engagement piece, we deliver surveys, and I'll go on to talk about the other use cases for our consented data in a minute. So in this case, we're clicking on a message from a retailer. Now, to make sure we've got engagement for people when they're viewing the advert, we sandwich it with questions. So one either side of the advert. But those questions are not redundant. What they're designed to do is turn the advertising into a conversation and create new and useful audiences for that advertiser at the end. So in this case, we asked people how much of their Christmas shopping that they had already done. In this case, none of it. The advert in question was for a major retailer in the UK called John Lewis, who are very famous every year for their Christmas ads. This year it was featuring Elton John, and they spend millions on the creative, and they spend many, many more millions on the media. So the advert plays, it's the only thing on screen, and there is no other distraction, so it's brand safe as well. We then asked a follow-up question around how much do you normally spend on Christmas? In this case, if you're looking at maybe someone who normally spends more than 2,000 euros on Christmas presents and hasn't started their Christmas shopping, that is an extremely valuable audience for the advertiser in that case. So we can then go back to these people with further messages and customize that message so that if you spend more than 2,000 euros, you might get an invitation for personal shopping. If you spend 500 euros, you might get a more mass market proposition coming to you next. And that concludes what we call the engagement. At the end, you get a confirmation of how much you have earned for your data being used for targeting purposes. And we also give people the opportunity to click through to the advertiser's site that the advert is trying to drive them to. It is optional, that click-through. We absolutely don't insist on it. If you click through, in this instance, we were driving people to their Black Friday event. And then finally, you get your blockchain receipt, which is there indelibly in your app. And it shows you all of the various bits of information that is logged in the blockchain, everything from when you were targeted, how you were targeted, why you were targeted, and how much you earned. What I'll do is I'll just pan over to Simon, who can whiz you through a live example of how this works.
Thanks very much. Just very briefly need to plug this in. Oi. It's the most stressful point of my day. So this is a live example of how YouGov Direct works. I'm just going to wait till my phone clicks in with the Wi-Fi, which, as you can all see, has gone off my phone in perfect timing with me to do this. What we're going to run through is an example of the Netflix message that we ran during one of our trials. We're all involved in this now. I'll talk a little bit more about that, and if the Wi-Fi thing comes up, you shout at me. So one of the things we did with Netflix that we'll hopefully be able to show you is very similar to John Lewis, but ahead of the release of their new TV series, Our Planet, which now so what you see here is the invitations page. It's not gonna. It's never worked with technology, children, animals.
Or animals.
Right, we'll just leave that for now. So, with Netflix, what we did was very similar to the John Lewis thing, but built in a way of targeting Amazon Prime customers by asking them what their perceptions of cost would be for a Netflix subscription, to see what they thought of the competition, to build up a picture of that industry, and to provide information about what kind of programs could be used in adverts to Amazon customers to target them on behalf of Netflix, so picking their kind of favorite genres. And it would have been great to show you that, but not today. Have you got the click? So, as Will said, we ran 2 trials of this. The first, we want to check that our panel, our data subjects, would be interested in this kind of product where it'd be more immediate, they'd have more power over their own data, but they'd also see a more direct kind of relationship between how they're being rewarded for sharing that data than in a traditional market research world. We were really pleased with the first results. We saw that our panelists were really enjoying the experience. They liked the fact that they were being targeted and paid more immediately for participating. And so what we needed to do was prove that there was a client case for this as well. And so we went out to a series of really quite large names from the entertainment, charity, FMCG, publishing and broadcasting industries, and asked them to provide us with live adverts, live campaigns, and crucially trackable links, so we could see that people were making purchases or subscriptions on the back of these adverts. I'll just run you through a couple of the examples from the trial. So for a major film company, we delivered a trailer for a family movie that had already been out for 4 or 5 weeks, and in the UK had just gone past one of the big school holidays, so it was coming to the end of its run. And they asked us to target quite obviously, parents who had at least one child still living at home. And the level of engagement that we had there was 99%. And when we're talking about engagement here, like Will said, this is where they've gone through the full message. So they've answered those questions and they've seen the whole advert. It's not a case of they've just clicked something open and then it's gone, or they've got lost in the journey on the way to where they were going. And then we started to get really excited about how many people were clicking through at that last screen to go through and actually look at, oh, is there a cinema near me showing this film? And then even though this film had been out for a kind of really long time in terms of kids' films, 6% of people, so roughly there was 62 out of 1,000 purchases of tickets, which compares to around about just under 2% that this company would expect at that point in this film's lifespan. At the same time, as well as that kind of real business outcome being tested, they were still getting the traditional sort of research insight. So people were letting them know when they were most likely to go to the cinema, whether they would take all their children, whether they'd go only at weekends, in the evening, or if there were people who were going to wait until a film would be on Netflix, or that even they might still buy it directly in DVD format. We also did something with a primetime TV show with a UK broadcaster, and this is something we're really excited about because it's something that could be done elsewhere, but contained within the data vault where you're finding more things out about people, it really enriches this. And so we put out an advert during the day for this TV show and asked people at the end of the advert, would you like a reminder to watch this? 31% of our panel said yes, we would like a reminder for this. 18% of the whole of the YouGov Direct panel watched the show, but what was key about this is it led to a 15% uplift against a regular control group for this. So we could see that it was having a real effect in driving an audience to that show. And then just another example here where we were working with a charity. They came to us with a very different, with a kind of a different reason. They weren't looking for donations. They obviously weren't looking for sales. What they were looking for was uplift on a new issue they were looking to raise, that they had found that people didn't understand about the sector they were engaged with, or the issues that they were engaged with. Again, engagement was slightly lower, but it was still so much higher than a regular kind of just digital contact in email form or elsewhere. Click-through was higher, and for them, what they wanted to achieve, they saw a 23% uplift in people understanding the issue they were trying to raise. Another thing that happened as a side effect of this that we weren't looking to do is during this week, they had an 83% uplift in traffic to their website through this. So people were genuinely looking at, I've seen this, I want to know more about it. And it was a kind of huge change for how much they normally get. And something, not me, has decided it's time for Will to talk again.
Brilliant. So those were examples of the types of ads that we were able to deliver, whether that was shifting viewing, whether that was shifting brand perception and delivering the message, or encouraging sales directly. But the broadcaster that we were working with looked at the results of their primetime campaign and said, can we use the data in a slightly different way? Given that you've got consent, can we ask people to sell us their data directly? We thought, okay, why not? This is all about giving consumers power, giving them the opportunity to earn, giving them the opportunity to have organizations talk to them in a more relevant way. So we put the question to people, and 74% of our users agreed and gave their consent for their data to be sold directly to the advertiser. Now, this had two functions in it. One, it created their internal CRM alignment. They had 3 different CRM systems, all using a different individual identifier to identify someone. whether that be email address, whether that be postcode, whether that be date of birth, or their mobile number. So we collected all those bits of data, along with the other types of data that they were interested in this case, viewing habits and brand preferences. And we gave that data to the advertiser themselves, which they've now ingested into their CRM system to not only align their CRM systems, but also to enhance the data set that they've got so that they can better communicate with people, serve them more relevant content, serve them more relevant offers. And we were slightly surprised by this result in terms of how many people were willing to consent. So we went back and asked people what they thought and why that they gave their consent for data to be sold. 42% of people said, yeah, I get it. I want the broadcaster to serve me more relevant offers and to improve the services that they supply to me. An equal number of people said, yeah, do you know what? The monetary value that we gain from this is fair, compensation. So that, again, was an interesting use case that we are now going to take to market as well, alongside the advertising audiences. But let's just look at some of the other results that came out of this. And speed is undoubtedly one thing that we were, again, surprised by within the app. It takes us 10 minutes to get 1,000 responses to a question or 1,000 views to an ad. So it's incredibly quick. We got an average engagement rate of 85%, and that is people being offered the opportunity to view an ad, going all the way through, completing those builder questions, viewing the ad, and getting through to their blockchain receipt, which compared with any other type of form of advertising is an incredibly high engagement rate. And our average click-through rate is about 32% on first impression. Which again, compared to all other benchmarks, is an extraordinarily high level of engagement. But we also asked users what they thought of the platform. 95% of them said that they wanted to continue using YouGov Direct. They thought it provided them relevance, they thought it provided them power, and they thought it was fair monetary reward for doing so. We had a similarly high level of people willing to recommend the platform for others, and that is one of the mechanisms we're going to use to gain scale within the platform. And 3/4 of people said that they wanted YouGov to power their advertising around the internet, which for us, again, is a tremendously exciting opportunity and an incredibly high result, and it shows that people do value the platform itself. So, what are we going to build? So far, because we've built an app, and we've built an app to be a controlled environment and serve advertising through, but we don't want to be the channel. We're not trying to set ourselves up as a media owner here. What we are going to do is use that data vault to power audiences around the internet using our existing distribution channels through DMPs and data houses. But several thousand people, or 10,000 people, 50,000 people isn't interesting as a group for advertisers. We need millions on the platform. So what we're doing at the moment is building relationships with publishers and corporates that have very large data sets. What we're taking to them and what we're building with them is agreements where we can take a consumer-focused proposition to their audience, but we can also help them monetize their data. An example of the way that we're doing this in the UK is capitalizing on the open banking framework. For those of you that are not familiar, the legislation has changed in the UK, and now via a form of consent, any organization, as long as they are registered with the regulator, can obtain a consumer's financial transaction data. Now that for us is incredibly interesting. You no longer need to ask people if they're a customer of Netflix. You know from their subscription and their banking records. You know how valuable a customer they are at the grocery multiples. You know a huge amount of data about them that we can pre-populate their data vault with and help them to monetize. So that is one way that we're going to gain scale in the platform, but we are looking for, and always, new publisher agreements. In Germany, we've started our first one with Handelsblatt. In the meantime, while we build scale in the platform, what we've developed and what we've got as a result of this is a byproduct is some new and exciting research tools. So we've got a new type of ad test that you can link through to business outcomes. We've got an incredibly fast response time, 10 minutes for 1,000 responses. So we're going to take that to market as a new product as well as that CRM enrichment piece that I talked about with that broadcaster. New offer, consent-led, GDPR compliant. In terms of rollout, we've soft launched in the UK, and that is going live as of the 1st of July. We're then taking that to other major English-speaking markets first, and they will follow later this year. And we are coming to Germany, and that will be in early 2020, unless, of course, that we get massive demand, in which case we will accelerate our platform development. So in terms of, I talked about at the very start an offer for anybody in this room. And that is, while we are in soft launch mode, while we are in trial mode, we are offering anybody the chance to give us a free campaign, give us a campaign. We'll amplify it. We will deliver it to your target audience. We will test that ad and deliver business outcomes. And we're also looking for any CRM enrichment case studies that we can also use. So if you are interested in that, please drop me a line. It's will.ulstein@yougov.com. Or do come and find us at our stand. We're in Hall B6, D13. It is incredibly hot in there. So do bring water and take your jacket off. What I'll now do is open the floor to questions. We do have Dörte with us. She is German, so if you would like to ask your question in German, please feel free to do so. Give us a minute while we just put some headphones on. You on? I'm on. Okay. Do we have any questions? Oh, there's one down the back. Lady in the yellow? No. Just waving.
Technology's amazing here, right? It should work on. Yeah? Okay. Yeah. Can you hear me? Yeah. Perfect. On the Netflix example, which you skipped over, can you share any more insights at all?
Simon, do you want to take that?
Yeah, I mean, or we can try again. No, I'm joking. I'm just winding up. Yeah, so with the Netflix example, this was one of the first things we tried during the December trial. The reason we tried it is because we know a large number of people obviously subscribe to Netflix, but there's still, in the UK, roughly 50% of households who would be digital anyway don't yet subscribe to Netflix. So we serve the kind of, these are the programs that are coming up ahead of Christmas on Netflix. how much do you think a Netflix subscription is? Do you think this is good value? And then retargeted people who said, we think this is good value, with a kind of, well, did you know there's a 30-day free trial? And what we saw in the December trial was around about 8% of the addressable market took up the free trial as a result of seeing it. And I think one of the things we've learned from both the trials that we've run so far and the soft launch we're going through now is that actually in terms of marketing, people's marketing and messaging and content is great. It's just not hitting the audience they want to be hitting in that kind of, in a targeted way. So if someone's put out if a Netflix advert is on Facebook, lots of people like me are going to already be Netflix subscribers who are part of those views, and it's just wasted clicks for them. So that's one of the things we saw. Thank you. I should explain, I've got a lollipop in my hand because I've got a cold, not because I'm a child.
That's debatable. What other questions? Yes, lady down here. Can we get a microphone? Lady in the black jumper.
Thank you. How do you increase your panel at the beginning? Like, how do you address your YouGov to increase the audience you have?
Okay. So there's two ways that we built the user base to start with. YouGov has a panel of 7 million people globally. And for our launch phases, what we did is we just brought people in from that. People that have a trusted relationship with us, people that already know us and give us their data. So that was the first way that we recruited. Now what we're doing is driving scale through publisher relationships and through corporates or other organizations that have large consumer databases. So in the first instance, banks are incredibly interesting to us because they've also got a lot of data that is also interesting to advertisers and can be used to monetize. Utilities are another one. So for example, energy companies. They can tell an awful lot about a household through their energy footprint and consumption. So we're looking at that. Those are the ways that we're going to drive scale. There are also people on our board that want us to launch a mass consumer campaign, which I'm sort of slightly nervous of at this point in time, given the media spend that would be required to put behind that. But that consumer education piece is another option in the timeline as we build. Does that answer your question? Excellent. Lady down here at the front.
So if you're having a contract with all those publishing houses, right? And if I'm a consumer and would get a message from you asking if I want to be part of YouGov, I would ask myself, okay, where did they get those files from? Where did they get my data from? So that's not very trustworthy. How do you deal with that? Okay.
You're absolutely right. If there's got to be a journey that people go on. There can't just be a shock and a step into YouGov Direct. That just won't work. So what we're doing as part of the publisher agreement is giving people a soft introduction to YouGov. So an example is that we are providing them with technology that will allow them to increase stickiness to their pages on their websites. And we're doing that through the introduction of survey tools. We're giving them new chat technology that, again, they can introduce into their site that gives data to editorial as well, so that they can write more relevant and compelling articles. What that does is subliminally starts introducing YouGov to readers of sites or publisher users or viewers. as a result of that increased profile, what we're then giving people the opportunity to do is give us some data, and in return we give them something else before we take them on the final journey into YouGov Direct, and them downloading the app, populating their data vaults, and eventually serving them relevant advertising. As I said, that's where the mass consumer education piece is going to come and help us. That if we can get our name out there, become that household trusted name, even more so than we are, then that will definitely help us as well. Question down the front.
Yeah, you said you're using blockchain as a technology and you reward the customers. Do you reward them in bitcoins or Stellar, or do you also using cryptocurrencies to reward?
The short answer is no, we're not using crypto. Very short answer, or very easy answer to that is the volatility of crypto. We looked at potentially a YouGov coin as well, but actually, what do people respond best to? And that is cold, hard currency that they know. One of the problems with crypto is that very few people understand it on the street. All right, many people in this room might understand blockchain and cryptocurrency, but the average person has a very, very limited understanding of exactly what that is. So, euros, pounds, dollars is a much more compelling currency to reward people in. Any other questions? Gentleman in the corner.
Thanks. Do you somehow limit the ability to earn money with your platform so that it doesn't turn out into a kind of sport answering your questions with the users?
Simon, do you want to answer the sport, or shall I?
The sport. Yeah. So I mean, there will be there's two answers. We will obviously limit the number of responses to a question if a client wants us to. So if we only want to pay for 1,000 responses. In terms of what you're getting out of it, there's also there is a tacit agreement of you're only going to get out of this what you put in. So if you're someone who's not genuinely interested in an advert from a certain company, you could get this and you could try and game it for 2p or whatever. You're going to watch it over and you won't watch it over and over again. You can only watch it once, but you could try and see how many of these things by having as much of your data opened as possible. But in terms of people trying to game, I think I will be most attractive to advertisers. We haven't seen that yet, but we do have plans for how we will stop that kind of potential activity.
So an example of the way we control for that is logic checks and longitudinal checks. So that if people start, switching gender or jumping age bands, or massive increases in disposable income, those sorts of things spark red flags on our system. It's not to say that people can't switch gender. Of course they can, but the laws of probability suggest that it might be something that we have to investigate further to prevent fraud. So yeah, we're aware in the same way that in the market research world, people might try to game the system. We can deploy the same logic checks and the same fraud detection within our system as we do there. Any other questions? Take that once, twice. Okay. Thank you all very much indeed. I really appreciate your time and attention. Do come and see us at the stand if you're interested, or drop me a line if you want that free campaign. Thank you.